Hi everybody, and welcome back to D-Ray Shop. Today we're going to be rebuilding the front forks on this 1986 XL600R. So let's get started. Now, the first item to take off is going to be the speedometer cable. It's just held over this Phillips screw right here. Next we'll remove the brake caliper. Next, we're going to remove the front wheel. And to get that axle out of there, you've got these 4 6mm nuts that hold this little pinching device onto the front axle. So all we got to do is just back those off a little bit. That will release the axle. Now we can thread the axle out. Next we'll take the right fork leg off. That fork leg is attached with 2 pinch bolts on the lower triple clamp and then 2 more pinch bolts up here on the top triple clamp. So we'll take all 4 of those bolts loose and we'll slide that fork out of there. Alright, there's our fork. Next we're going to remove what's left of this old busted fork boot. Next we're going to remove the dust seal, and then we'll also go ahead and remove the retaining clip that holds the seal in place. Now, you want to be careful when you're prying this off here so that you don't let your screwdriver slip and nick the fork tooth. You're going to need you a pair of circlip pliers that has a 90-degree angle on them. You just reach in there, get on your circlip, just kind of ease it around a little bit. There we go. That's got our circlip. Now we're going to take this lower bolt out of the fork here. This is what's holding all the rest of the fork assembly together. Now at this point I still have the cap and spring in place on the top of the fork. And the reason why I leave those in place is they're going to hold the internals still so that as we're taking that bolt out, the internals doesn't spin. Another thing that's going to make it a little easier is if you got you an impact wrench here, that'll just buzz that bolt out there. And I'm going to slide this over my drain pan because when that comes out there's going to be a little bit of oil come out with it. When you take that bolt out, be sure you retain the copper sealing washer because it's going to come off with it. Now just scope that fork a few times and let all that fork oil run out. Now that we've got most of the oil out of this fork, we can go ahead and disassemble it. And the upper and lower halves of the fork just slide apart from one another. That's your fork tube, that's got your damper rod on it, and another piece that's probably going to retain in there, we'll just pump it out. There it is. This is your oil lock piece. And what this does, this rides on the very tip end of the damper. And what this thing does here, this keeps your fork from bottoming out metal to metal. It uses the oil that's in the bottom of the fork to hydraulically lock it if the fork compresses itself to the point to where it's going to bottom out. That way it bottoms on a cushion of oil and it doesn't hit on metal to metal. Now we're going to swap ends with this fork so we can take the cap, the spring, and the damper assembly completely out of the fork tube. That cap, it's right here on top, and there again it makes it a little easier if you have an impact gun to take that out with. Just be careful when you take it out because it is still going to have some spring pressure on it. There we go, there's your cap. There's our spring spacer. We'll have a washer. There's our fork spring. There's our damper and our lower damper spring. There we go. So now we'll clean all these parts up real good, set them aside, and then we'll get the fork seal out of that fork lower tube. Next, we're going to ease this seal out of this fork leg. Now what we got here is you have the seal, and then down below that there's a backing washer, and then down below that is what's called your syntalic bushing. That's a synthetic metal coated bushing that makes your fork slide. So what we're going to want to do is you're going to want to reach in here with this screwdriver and get between the backing washer and the seal. You don't want to go down in there too far because you don't want to gouge that fork leg. And then we're just going to very carefully ease that fork seal up just a little bit at a time. We'll kind of work our way around till we get it broke loose. There we go. Just be real careful with it because, like I say, you don't want to nick that aluminum fork lower. There we go. That's got our fork seal out. All right.